Hi, Sheila here. And the video quality is a bit poor because I'm doing it from my computer and I want to do an analysis of Copernicus this time. So this episode is going to be dedicated to the natal chart of Copernicus. And I'm going to show you a thought process, not a refined product. This means that I'm going to head into Wikipedia and look at Copernicus myself. I know some of it. I've ran into him through philosophy of science, leading, a revolution in science and changing methods and changing the way we see the world, changing cosmology. He was also an astrologer. Back then, astrology and astronomy were the signs of the stars and they were united. And we have his birth chart according to Julian calendar. So this episode, some sniffing of oils, setting intention for it to be in alignment, and revealing good knowledge, valuable knowledge about Copernicus. So I'm not making predictions this time. I'm going to head right to the chart, but first I'm going to share my screen, go to Wikipedia, and try to say something smart about Copernicus. So Nicolas Copernicus, he lived during 1473 to 1543. Polymath. So he was mathematician, astronomer, Catholic canon. He basically changed cosmology. He formed a model of the universe that placed the sun rather than the earth on its center. At its center, this is a model we used until today. Okay, and it has been a couple of centuries, right? So he developed. Okay. So Copernicus developed his model independently of Aristarchus of Samos, who was a Greek astronomer that formulated a similar model some 18 centuries earlier. 18 centuries earlier. Okay, I'm definitely going to open up this person's link. That's new. So he published his model on the revolution of celestial spheres, and that triggered the Copernican revolution, making a pioneering contribution to the scientific revolution. This is why every scientific history of and philosophy of science thinkers, like Kuhn, like Feyerabend, wrote about the Copernican revolution. While Kuhn will have one explanation, Feyerabend will see it as a proof that we cannot predict a particular method that will yield scientific results, a scientific revolution, and that was the source of the anything goes. I will definitely try to see if I can do Feyerabend for one of my future episodes. I think he is highly criticized and misunderstood, and you need to understand him first before you criticize the anything goes that he said. But that's digressing. So Copernicus was born in Prussia, a part of Poland, polymath, studied law, a ton of stuff. Also a diplomat, economist, derived the quantity theory of money, and yeah, he did more stuff than what we know him for. So, oh wow, mother's family, father family, where do we go? Education, planetary observation. Okay, let's see his life first. There's something interesting. His father was a merchant, youngest of 4 children. His brother and sister. Sister was a nun and priest, and yeah, sister was a nun. Okay, that's the family. Copernicus never married and is not known to have children. Had a relationship with Anna Schilling. Okay, and she was considered a mistress by the church. So they tried to get him to separate from her. So that was his relationship story. Father's family. Why is it important? Let's see. Okay, couple of names for Copernic. And Nicola was named after his father. Okay, I don't know how much does that matter. Okay, so that was a quite esteemed family. Came from a quite esteemed family. He knew Latin, German, Polish in equal fluency, also spoke Greek and Italian, and some Hebrew. That's interesting. He wrote in Latin, the language of the academia, the European academia at that time. Okay, that's the name. Education in Poland. And yeah, we'll probably go to his theory. I studied at Uppsala. Okay, that was his training and planetary observations. He made 3 observations of Mercury with errors of a couple of minutes of arc. Made 1 of Venus, Mars, and Jupiter and Saturn. So he already observed traditional planets. Yeah, Mercury, Venus, Mars, Jupiter, and Saturn. These are the traditional planets. He made a couple of errors, but you can see that these errors, as far as I understand, there were up to 31 minutes or 77. Oh, with Mars he had the biggest errors. And he observed Aldebaran by the moon, conjunction of Saturn and the moon, and we have this for the astrologers. I'm going to mark this one. So conjunction of Saturn and the moon in 1500. Let's see if we have anything interesting here. Yeah. Journeys. Want to see the politics stuff. Heliocentricism. Okay, heliocentrism, when you talk about astrology, there is geocentrism and there is heliocentrism. So geocentrism is when we want to talk about the Earth. And we want to talk about the cosmos in relation to the Earth. And so we do the computation according to geocentric computation. That is, how are the planets in relation to the Earth? But when we want to say something about the cosmos, we use heliocentric methods, which I believe were seen probably in the Mesopotamian astrology, but definitely in the Babylonian. So he used heliocentrism, and the heliocentric hypothesis is basically the hypothesis we now know as the center of the universe not being the Earth, but actually he would come to understand that this is actually the sun. So the revolutions. Okay, there would be a lot of interesting stuff there. So died at the age of 70 from paralysis. Yeah. So the Copernican system. Let's look about the central fire. So right from 480 to BCE to 385 BCE, Philolaus described the astronomical system as a place where there is a central fire that is not the sun, but was a central fire that was the center of the universe. And a counter Earth, the Moon, and the Sun itself. So the planets revolved around the central fire. This is also a heliocentric kind of prediction. Okay, this Copernican heliocentric system. That is not this. The Earth is not the center of the cosmos. So we have Archimedes and other people who advanced the heliocentric model. Okay, and then we have. So of course, the church was not supportive of a heliocentric model. So during Copernicus' time, it was actually Ptolemy's theory that was accepted, and that was that the Earth was the stationary center of the universe, and the universe revolved around the Earth. That was Ptolemy. So the astrology that we know that is geocentric is actually Ptolemy. So Ptolemy was, the tradition criticized. Islamic astronomy criticized Ptolemy. And they questioned the Earth being the center of the universe. And some believe that the Earth revolves around its axis. It's not stationary. Okay. And Copernicus they already developed, mathematics. And you can see here the beginning of the calculation of the orbit of the planet, which is fascinating. And so Copernicus entered the heliocentric hypothesis. He wrote his new heavenly arranged, hypothesis. Okay, this is the heliocentric scheme. No one center to celestial. There is no one center to all celestial circles, all spheres. This is basically assuming. Today we could think about it as multiple galaxies. Center of the Earth is not the center of the universe. So he talks about the center towards which heavy bodies move and the center of lunar sphere. So he talked about the moon as circulating the Earth. I don't know which heavy bodies move around the Earth. I don't know what he meant by that. And the sphere surrounding the sun were okay. So here he says the sun is the center of the universe. Ratio of the Earth distance. Okay. Here we talk about geometry. Okay, another thing about the sun. What appears to us as the motion of the sun arises not from the motion, but from the motion of the Earth and our sphere. So we revolve around the sun like any other planet, and then the Earth has more motion. It would be very interesting to understand how did he conclude that, but know that he was leaning back to a heliocentric tradition. He didn't, he did not invent this all by himself. It was something that existed in the past that he revived, and so he was basically reviving a certain tradition. He was reviving something. He was not coming up with something that's completely new. That would probably be important when I'll look in his chart and I'll look at the 9th. I would expect to see traditional placement there rather than actually, innovative. The apparent retrograde and direct motion of the planets rises not from their motion, but from the Earth's motion. This is so, think about how difficult it is to conceive that, because when we would observe the Earth, we would observe stuff revolving around the Earth. With observation, that is what we would see. So you would need mathematics to conclude that this is not in fact the truth. So this is very revolutionary. The motion of the earth suffices to explain so many apparent inequalities in the heaven. This is a very counterintuitive knowledge. It's a very mathematical knowledge. Okay. Successors, okay, that's already less interesting. The controversy. So, the Catholic Church took official action against Copernicus. And then, you know, when Galileo came, they of course opposed Galileo. Tolasani was the first notable person to move against Copernicus, and he was a magister of holy powers. He was a censor of the Catholic Church. So Copernicus was censored by the church, and this is something that, you know, my expectation would be to see a Saturnian effect in either his career house, or not ninth house, but some maybe 10th or 11th house. And I think I saw it. I was just looking at this chart. I think he had the ninth house in Taurus, but I'm not sure. Okay. So Tolasani was a person who denounced Copernicus. And he wanted to refute it with philosophical arguments. Now, of course he could refute it with philosophical arguments, because the equivalent of philosophy is mathematics. This was not just, you know, observation based. You had to interpret the observations in a mathematical way that was basically a sort of philosophy, but with math. So it makes a lot of sense to combat Copernicus with philosophy and rational arguments. And Tolasani, according to Tolasani, it was scientifically unproven and unfounded that that the sun was the center of the universe. So, and that is something valid. Copernicus had assumed the motion of the earth, but offered no physical theory whereby one would deduce this motion. This is a very valid argument against Copernicus. And no one realized the investigation into Copernicanism would result in rethinking the entire field of physics. So, so that was, you know, how it will affect how we do science to this day. It will affect how we rely on mathematics to describe the world, and not just on observation, but the mathematical computation to interpret these observations. Because think about it, if you just observe from the Earth, the planets from the Earth, you would get to conclude that all of them revolve around us. You need mathematics to think differently. And you need to accept certain mathematical axioms so that they are so powerful that they negate observation. And even though they negate what we see with the naked eye, we still accept them. So this is something I'm trying to think what would be my prediction here. Because we are moving from something that perhaps is more earth-based to air-based philosophy. So we're moving into a paradigm that is air-based. I don't know what would be the astrology of the times. What era would it be? It would probably still be considered a Piscean era, but we are moving into an air sort of thinking, not physical so much as mathematical, logical, and perhaps less, you know, a little more secular. Okay. The assumption was that mathematics could not be taken as serious means to determine physical causes. Okay, that was Tolasani. We cannot rely on mathematics to interpret physics. And the whole concept of Copernican revolution was that we can and we should rely on mathematics rather than, you know, just observation, just physical observation. So Copernicus used mathematics and astronomy to postulate about physics and cosmology. Okay, rather than beginning with accepted principles of physics and cosmology to determine things about astronomy of mathematics. If I try to compare this to medicine, there is science-based medicine and there is evidence-based medicine. So science-based medicine actually begins with what we know scientifically, the axioms that we have scientifically, and only from these axioms can an experiment be derived. While evidence-based medicine looks into what works and doesn't try to explain it with scientific theory so much as just to conclude on what works. This noise is annoying. Hope it will be over soon. So think about the whole revolutionary act of this. So Copernicus was undermining the whole system of philosophy of science at the time. Okay, so that was his collision with the philosophy of science of the times. Okay, and the biggest collision was religious. So Tolasani was, he was a censor of the church, and he tried to address Copernicus both on a scientific level, saying that this is just that Copernicus defies logic, and on a religious level. So he said, we are indeed not ignorant that the circuit of the heavens is finite, and that the earth, like a little globe, is placed in the center. And this was a commentary on Psalm. Okay, the heavens revolve daily, and the immense as is fabric and inconceivable, the rapidity of the revolutions, we expect no concussion. How could the earth hang suspended in the air if not upheld by God's hand? Okay, so this is where we run into religion as something that's much more fixed and much less dynamic. And that really stuck Copernicus, because when you go against something that is religiously accepted at that time, you're in a problem. So it was perceived as going against the Bible, and this will be very important when we would want to understand the separation of religion and science. Okay, Copernicus, Galileo would come to be people who create a sort of separation from religion and science, which will later become the separation of spirituality and science. So we must remember that these people were astrologers and astronomers. They talked about the science of the stars. They talk about, and astrology was a part of divination. Astrology was a spiritual practice. It was not just a scientific praxis. So Galileo was warned not to hold or defend Copernican doctrine. Following the position of Copernicus, which is contrary to true sense and authority of Holy Scripture. So there we have the collision of scientists who are actually cosmologers, who are astrologers and cosmologers, and religion. It is so important politically, it is so important in terms of the philosophy of science. So this is a key figure. and it would be perhaps in a future episode I will try to delve into the astrology of the zeitgeist of the times. Now, without further ado, there can be so much that can be said, but without further ado, I want to turn into the chart of Copernicus. And no. Okay. No. Here we have it. So this is Copernicus. And I'm doing whole sign houses. And we can see we do have a traditional sign in the ninth house, and we have the MC in the ninth house. So MC in the ninth house denotes a person whose life path is to do with perhaps changing philosophy, changing the way we see the world, changing cosmology. And we see a very traditional sign. So this was not the Copernican revolution was actually not something new, but reviving of something old. And we see Venus here is in the 8th house in Aries. Aries is a fire sign. It's initiating something. 8th house, hidden things, that which is hidden. So I'm covering that which is hidden. But that's the 9th. It's a traditional planet. Remember Feynman, the first episode? He also had the 9th house in Taurus, and he derived a lot from Babylonian math. He derived from Babylonian math. That is a very traditional system. He was a very practical person. And also Copernicus, he was deriving from Hellenistic tradition. It was a very practical person, looking practically at what is going on in the heavens and not necessarily what is going on from our vantage point. So he was actually traditional. He was not, he was, you know, he was innovative, but what his innovation was reviving a certain tradition. And then his 10th house in Gemini. So Gemini is indeed an air sign. And we have Saturn there. So we can see that his career, his status as a public figure was very much challenged. He had a lot of delays. There was a lot of making sure that things happen in time. This is what Saturn does, making sure that things happen in time and getting you prepared for things. So there was a lot of collision in it, and it was very difficult for him to express himself. And this house is ruled by Mercury. Mercury is in the 7th in Pisces. So Mercury in Pisces, if I'm not mistaken, I think Einstein also has this. Mercury in Pisces is actually not at home. It is not very clear, and Mercury also makes a hard aspect to Saturn. So there's a challenge here. We actually do not see a very clear thinker. when you just look at the chart, we don't see a person who has an easy time with thinking. This does not mean that he's that the product of his thought process was not concrete and was not valuable. And also with Feynman, we saw he had the Mercury in Taurus, and it was in a clash with Saturn in the 12th house. So he had a lot of struggles in his thinking process. It was not something that came easy. So Mercury and Saturn, we can see that this person struggled with his theories. He was struggling to make predictions. He was not something, he was intuitive, because with Pisces you get intuition. And the 7th house, remember, as I speak about the 7th house, this is not just the one-to-one relationships. This is also a political house. Okay, so collision with authority figures by his thought process. So his thought process, the product of his mind, was in collision with authority figures that we can see in the 10th, in this case, the church. Okay, although the church is also denoted by the 9th. And yet Sun in the 7th. The ruler of the 7th, let's see, Jupiter is in the And the modern ruler would be Neptune in the third. Uranus, that's to do with astronomy, research, astrology, is in Scorpio in the third house. So this is the third, ninth axis. Third is kind of like the blogs we write every day. It's not so much the books that we will write. I'm trying to figure out, you know, what would Uranus in Scorpio look like? When I think about Uranus in Scorpio, I think about taking a storm and drowning it in the deepest waters, so it can create a tsunami of something, which he did. And this is the ruler of his, the modern ruler of his sixth house. The sixth house is indeed an air sign. His day-to-day work, Aquarian, and Aquarian logic is less geocentric. It's definitely something that is to do with seeing objects and society as equal. So society, if I look at society of planets, it seems it's something equal and not something that revolves around the Earth. And look at this axis. This axis is, okay, this is a stretch. What I'm saying is a stretch. It's not something that's founded in science of astrology. It can be completely bogus, but I'm trying. You know, if we don't try, if we don't think, then we don't make any progress. So this is an air sign. So his work, his daily work, was thinking. He had clashes there at work, had enemies at work. Although I think Mars is actually happy in this house of enemies because it can protect itself, but it is next to Chiron. So there were wounding there with work, with serving the world. Yeah. And look at this axis, because the 12th house is the house of collective unconsciousness. And we have Leo there. Leo is ruled by the sun. So if I think about what he would think collectively, the unconscious collective, or what would he see the cosmos, because this is also the house of the void of other dimensions, I can definitely see how a person who holds a heliocentric perception that the world revolves around the sun has Leo in the 12th. If Leo would be in the 9th, I would also say the similar thing. So we have something that's not revolving air, it's not revolving the earth, but revolving around the sun. And the sun is in the 7th. I'm not sure, I know what to make of it. Sun in Pisces. Sun oppositions Pluto. Pluto in Virgo in the 1st house. So this is a person who was very powerful. Pluto is not conjuncting the ascendant, but it's not too far from it either. An ascendant in Virgo. Ascendant in Virgo is someone that can see into the little details. Feynman also had ascendant in Virgo. Is someone that is very good in diagnosis. And Pluto in the 1st house gives you a powerful personality, can also be manipulating and controlling until it learns to evolve, but it definitely gives you a person with, you know, powerful persona, themes of power. And again, we see Pluto squaring Saturn. So Saturn, if Saturn would be the authority figures in his life, or the church, or the people who are supposed to accept him, the church is seen by the 9th, but authority figures are seen by the 10th, and definitely seen by Saturn. We see this square. We see the relationship of tension. It's a Martian aspect. Okay, remember the 90, yin, yin, yin turns into extreme yang. So extreme conflict between these planets. The temperature of the temperature, oh, I'm not sure about the temperature. But you know, Pluto, hot and cold, although these are both ruled by Mercury, so that the 1st and the 10th would be ruled by Mercury, which is in the 7th. And the ruler of the ascendant is also Mercury, so very prominent mercurial person, a very prominent thinker, the ruler of the ascendant, and the 10th, and the 1st, of course, ruler of the ascendant. So ruler of the first and ruler of the 10th is here in the 7th, which is also a very political place, and prominent Mercury. And Mercury makes a harsh aspect to authority figures to Saturn. Let's take a look at what else we got here. This is a night chart. We can see the moon there. That means Saturn is also more malefic. For day charts, the Mars is more malefic. For night charts, Saturn is more malefic. So this intensifies that struggle that he had with Saturn. And we do see Saturn opposition opposition Neptune. Neptune can be spiritual, it can be illusion. It inconjuncts. It conjuncts. And in conjunction, the evolutionary astrology calls it a chiron angle. As I explained previously, I see the 150 degree as something that is 60 plus 90, and 60 is yin, yin, yin turning into yang, 90 is yang, the opposite. 60 is yang, yang, yang turning into yin, extreme yin. 90 is yin, 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 3, 3, 3 turning into extreme yang. Extreme yin, extreme yang collide. It's explosion. It's unpredictable. So explosion between that which is Neptunian in his chart in his 3rd house and that which is Saturnian. And that can be both within himself, but it can also mean that these authority figures in his life, and again, I'm making a stretch here, which I don't know if is correct astrologically or scientifically, but if I would not be here to make mistakes, then I will not make any progress. What? Oh no, when it starts doing that, I hate it when it happens. Oh, this is going to be, oh, great. And this could also mean that those authority figures were delusional. It may be that he was delusional actually, but these authority figures that were against him, that delayed him, were delusional. They were not thinking clearly. They did not have good relationship with Neptune. Neptune is not so well aspected. It is sextile in Pluto, just as we had in the heavens. At the time when I was born, Pluto was sextiling Neptune. I think it's still sextiling Neptune. I'm not sure, but it's interesting to see that it was sextiling Neptune. But Neptune was also in bad relationship with his Mars and Chiron. So delusion and disillusionment. This might even mean that Copernicus was somewhat delusional. That maybe we will find out something that is not so correct in Copernicus. But this can also, Neptune is not well placed. It is in the 3rd. Daily routines, the people around us, the siblings, the neighbors, but the stuff we do every day, yeah. But there is something here between these authority figures and Neptune that is not well balanced. Maybe his criticizers were delusional. And we think of Neptune, if Jupiter is religion, and Jupiter here is in the 4th, it is supported by Venus. It is not supported by the Sun. So again, the fourth is the home. It is also the motherland, and we see it's Sagittarius. So it is at home in Sagittarius, making a hard aspect to Uranus. So perhaps something revolutionary about the religion. It is also the motherland or the people. So I don't know so much about the politics of Copernicus, but that would be interesting to watch. And Jupiter is in a hard aspect to the Sun. So yeah, this could be religious. Jupiter is also religion, religious struggles at the homeland, perhaps. What else do we see here? So the ruler of the 3rd in the 1st. Perhaps something entrepreneurial can we see here, but in modern astrology we would see even a self-employed person there, and he has Rahu there, so it's a prominent house. I don't know how to interpret the 3rd house in this respect. That would make Keto very close to his midheaven. So Keto is very close to his midheaven. Mouse move. Oh, it's doing this again. So Keto is very close to the midheaven. That means that Copernicus, when at the time that he lived, what he did there in the ninth, it was not the first time that his soul was doing that. It was not the first time that his soul was changing something in society. And we can definitely see that also practically he revived a certain tradition of heliocentric cosmology and astrology, basically. So this was not the first time that he was doing that. He was reviving something. It was an incarnation of something that came again and again and again until he can make this revolution. And that is something I think we would see in people who are revolutionary. Their incarnation upon this earth at the time of the revolution is not the first. So it's very logical to see a person with Keto there than with Rahu, because this is something that his soul has already been doing and came to complete this process. Why the third? Teaching practical skills. I don't know how to read this place. No, I'm being honest. I don't know how to make what to make of it. Yeah. What else do we have here? 5th house Capricorn. Don't think that matters that much. 11th house in Cancer, the moon in the 4th. I don't know. 2nd house in Libra. Ruler of the 8th in the 6th. Okay, ruler of the 8th is also its resources. It's that intimate encounter we have with another being, the resources from another being. It's the gate of life and death. It's the hidden stuff. So his work had to do with cosmology and with astrology. And back then it was science of something that is hidden, that is not visible. Also the cosmos, it's not visible. So we would see that in the 12th. We would also see that in the 8th. That is what I make of it. Oh, thank God it released. Yeah. What else is there to look at? Venus here making in conjunction with Uranus. So again, another aspect, you know, the 8th house planet in conjunction with the planet of research and astrology. So something revolutionary about astrology, about astronomy is definitely seen. And I just don't know. Maybe I will turn this record off and then I will go and, you know, in the rest of my day and I will think about the 3rd house and I will say, oh, how come I didn't see it? But now I don't know the signification of the 3rd house. Yeah, that I think sums up the smart things that I have to say here. Let's see if there are any more rulers. So for me, Copernicus, if I try to think about what Copernicus meant to me, no, I learned about him as a child. He puts Saturn in my 4th house. He puts Jupiter in my 10th house. Moon in my 10th house. He puts Pluto in my 7th house. Don't like it. Sun and Mercury in my 1st. Yeah, any interesting stuff there? His 12th is in my 6th. Okay. And his 6th is my 12th, brings Mars and Chiron there. This is the 9th. Okay, so for me, his 3rd is my 9th. Again, mirror, somebody was not a perfect mirror. His Rahu is in the 3rd, my Rahu. Oh, okay. This is another thing like the Feynman thing, because Feynman also had ascendant in Virgo, while I have ascendant in Pisces, and had Keto. No, okay, no, okay. So it's not the perfect mirror, just the ascendants. The Keter Rahu is not the perfect thingy. But he brings into my ninth, he's Rahu, and he brings Neptune into my ninth. This means when someone brings Neptune into your ninth, it means you can be delusional about how you see. So the way I present Copernicus can be delusional. It can be that I'm biased in the way that I present this knowledge to you. So do take that into account. And it brings Uranus again into my ninth house. This means, so here's Rahu next to my Mars, Neptune between Saturn and Mars, and he's Uranus nearing my Pluto at 0 degrees Scorpio. So he brings knowledge of astrology and astronomy into my ninth, and that is something nice. It can be why I chose to talk about Copernicus, because it was a very intuitive choice. So that is interesting just to look at the ninth for me. Any other, he doesn't have anything in my fifth. In my 10th, he has the moon and Jupiter. Yeah, I don't think I see anything special there in the terms of relation, but I did see the Neptune here in my 9th. So the way I look at the world, the way I present him and his perception of the world can be delusional, so it can be biased. This is why I'm doing these things. The observation thingy, because if I would just do Copernicus without doing how do I relate to Copernicus, I would miss that, and I would miss being able to tell you, okay, take what I say with a grain of salt, or maybe illuminate on how do you see Copernicus and his revolution. Yeah, that sums up the smart things that I would have to say here. I will stop sharing the screen. And so I'm curious to hear what you have to say. I'm curious to hear what is your perspective. What would you make of this third house thingy? I just don't know what to do with that. So many things in the third. Why the third? Why was it? Because it's something he was doing every day? Was it publishing? He published a book. It's not something you would see in the third. Had it anything to do with siblings? I don't know. No idea. But that was interesting, and it was lovely for me to do Copernicus for you, because I think he's, you know, it is a main thinker. This was a turning point of the separation between religion and the church, which would turn out to be the separation of spirituality and the church, and science later in, you know, a couple of centuries. So that's something very important when we talk about spirit of matter, and we talk about cosmology, and we talk about history and philosophy of the sciences. Note that we have the birth time of these people, because cosmology and astrology, astronomy and astrology were united. This is something we will no longer have in modern times for everyone. So that was interesting. If you like my videos, like them. Actually, you know, like them, because it helps the algorithm. Share with people that you think will enjoy this discourse and will contribute in a respectful fashion. Doing these things is one of the most fulfilling things that I've done. Like, even if, like, usually there are very little viewers right now, but I still feel so fulfilled that I'm doing it, that I'm bringing this out to the world, because I haven't seen people analyze Copernicus, and I haven't seen people presenting these points of view, and I think it should be there. So I'll leave you with that, and we'll see each other in the next Spirit of Matter episode. If you want to get notifications for when I upload episodes, do subscribe and click the bell, and you have to mark that you want to receive all notifications. So you have to do all of these processes to get notifications from me. It's annoying, but that's how YouTube works. You can contact me If you want to support this project and get a reading from me, you can contact me in private, in Instagram or Twitter, and I will post the links to my accounts there. Every support is beneficial for me so that I can do this thing and I can give this knowledge free of charge. And I can continue on with deepening my own knowledge in astrology. The readings that I give are more for leisure and fun. I'm not going to delve into stuff that, you know, I'm not God, so I will not be able to tell you when will you meet a lover, or should you divorce this person, or all of these things that are more concrete. I don't delve into so much as I can say, you know, perhaps how do you want to work with other planets that contact your inner planets? How do you want to hone in on energy of Jupiter? How do you want to work with Mars? And those are things that I'm able to do practically for you that are helpful. And learn with you on your chart. This is a conversation. It's not me preaching to you or even consulting you. It is a conversation that deepens both my knowledge of astrology and your perspective of your own path and how astrology sees you. So I'll see you in my next video. Bye-bye.